have a list of competencies that we need to hire for. We are looking for leadership skills, communication skills, problem solving skills, decision making, critical thinking, analytical skills. Now, what do you do? In an interview, how do you assess these skills? Is it even possible? Let us look at some approaches to finding out if the candidate sitting in front of you in an interview has these skills or not. One of the most common approaches is to ask the candidate general questions, generic questions. These are questions like, tell me about yourself. Where do you see yourself 5 years from now? What are your strengths and weaknesses? Why do you want to work in this company? Why should I hire you? Now, note that none of these questions is likely to give you evidence for the answers that you hope, because what you want is something that will help you assess the candidate's leadership, communication, decision making, etc. skills. When you ask these questions, people usually give you generic answers. Sometimes they've already prepared these answers in advance and they give you these answers, and the decision making on your part or the candidate evaluation on your part happens more through your own perception or your own biases. Most of the time, the interviewer looks at the candidate, their body language, their tone of voice, their speaking ability, the confidence they display, and on the basis of that, through instinct or gut, makes a decision about what is the candidate's leadership ability or their communication skills. Note, there has been no direct evidence of these qualities from the candidate. That is the first approach, the generic approach. The second approach could be where the interviewer takes this whole idea seriously, that I have to evaluate this person's leadership ability. How do I do that? So what the interviewer can do is ask the candidate questions about leadership, right? Or conceptual questions to test with their knowledge about the concept of leadership or decision making or communication. So for example, such an interviewer might ask, have you read any books on leadership? Tell me, what do you think is a good definition of leadership? Or he might ask, what do you think are some critical mistakes that people make in communication? Now, this is definitely better than the generic approach, which was just really purely based upon the perception of the interviewer. At least here you are talking to the candidate about the topic for which you are evaluating him or her. But still, this is not sufficient, because most people can give theoretical answers which have no bearing upon what they actually do or what they would actually do if they ever faced those situations or if they had to demonstrate those skills in real life. Somebody who has read a lot of books on leadership is not necessarily a good leader. Somebody who is aware of different decision-making models is not necessarily a good decision maker. Conceptual knowledge does not often translate into real ability. Then, the third approach that the interviewer could take is asking hypothetical questions. Now, in this, the interviewer poses some hypothetical situation in front of the candidate and asks them to solve the problem. Well, this is definitely better than both the generic question approach and the conceptual question approach, because here at least the person is trying to give a response to a real situation. Even if the situation is not actually real, it is an imaginary situation. It's a hypothetical situation. A typical case could be something like, imagine if you go to your customer and the customer starts really talking very rudely to you. How will you handle this situation? Now, the answer again that the candidate gives in this case is something that is ideal, even though candidate might not have been in that situation, but the candidate will be able to imagine and give a sort of an answer that is pleasing to the interviewer or something that the interviewer wants to hear. So again, we are not really getting any data, any evidence on which we can base our decision about this candidate. So generic questions, conceptual questions, hypothetical questions really do not cut it when we are looking for a solid evidence-based interviewing technique which will help us to assess the candidate against this specific set of competencies that we are looking to evaluate them.